the British monarchy, which is more ideologically committed to a specific bestial view of man. The intention now appears to be to move Gordon Brown out of the way, in order to bring in a government that will implement the policy desired by the British monarchy, a policy of genocide. They are out to use the current economic breakdown to kill billions of people and ensure that the rest of the people are living in broken nations run as colonies of an empire of globalization. You say these are harsh claims, so instead of my summarizing their views, it is better to let them speak for themselves. Start with the thoroughly evil royal consort to that rapidly shrinking queen, Prince Philip. In 1981, during an interview with People magazine, he spoke openly for his desires of genocide of the world's population.
Human population growth is probably the single most serious long-term threat to survival. We're in for a major disaster if it isn't curbed, not just for the natural world, but for the human world. The more people there are, the more resources they'll consume, the more population they'll create, the more fighting they will do. We have no option. If it isn't controlled voluntarily, it will be controlled involuntarily by an increase in disease, starvation, and war.
The prince was more explicit about his views in a 1982 speech to Salford University, stating,
"The object of the World Wildlife Fund is to conserve the system as a whole, not to prevent the killing of individual animals. Those who are concerned about conservation of nature accept that all species are prey to some other species. They accept that most species produce a surplus that is capable of being culled without any way threatening the survival of the species as a whole."
Then, in 1988, to German press, Philip let loose his inner ambitions.
"In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation."
And take one last quote from an interview with British TV in 2008. When discussing the global food crisis, Philip gushes.
"Everyone thinks it's to do with not enough food, but it's really that demand is too great. Too many people. Basically, it's a little embarrassing for everybody. No one quite knows how to handle it. Nobody wants their family life to be interfered with by the government."
Now, despite his attempts at a politically correct presentation of his desires for genocide, we know that Prince Philip and his allies do have a very clear idea of how to handle it, so to speak. It was Prince Philip, along with the ex-Nazi Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, and the avid racist eugenicist Julian Huxley, who together founded the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, as an outfit to impose their genocidal policies internationally in the name of green. The active implementation of this genocide policy through the World Wildlife Fund and associated groupings has been well documented by the LaRouche movement for decades. The most direct and morally egregious case being the mass murder conducted against entire regions of the continent of Africa. But this still is just a taste of what they wish to implement, if not stopped. And the biggest environmentalist hoax that is now being pushed in pursuit of this genocide policy is the lie of a man-made global warming crisis, a complete scientific fraud. Yet this is being used to justify a global cap-and-trade dictatorship by which the British Empire could slash and cap vital power and industrial production for entire nations through supranational agencies and agreements. Now, one of the principal agents to step forward on behalf of green dictatorships is none other than Tony Blair. Take Blair's recent speech at the London School of Economics on June 5th of this year. He claims that the economic crisis is the opportunity to ram through their climate change dictatorship. At a time of collapsing infrastructure, and while the standards of living are plummeting, Blair says that the USA needs to cut its greenhouse emissions by 90%, and the world needs a global policy to be imposed over nations, because the global warming hoax is not taken seriously enough in China or India. A year ago, Blair launched the Breaking the Climate Deadlock Initiative, in an attempt to force nations to submit to such supranational global agreements, which would strip these nations of their sovereignty and place their key economic decisions in the hands of a dictatorship to be run by the empire. But this is no shift in policy for Blair. He has been employed by the British Empire to destroy the system of sovereign nation-states for years now. Simply look to his infamous 1999 speech in Chicago. As a sitting Prime Minister of Great Britain, Blair spoke of the coming end of the sovereignty of nations.
On the eve of a new millennium, we are now in a new world. We need new rules for international cooperation and new ways of organizing our international institutions.
He continued,
The most pressing foreign policy problem we face is to identify the circumstances in which we should get actively involved in other people's conflicts.
Blair then explicitly stated that NATO military interventions must be justified anywhere, quote, even though we are not directly threatened, end quote. Thus, a few years later, Tony Blair was one of the principal architects of the Iraq War. In 2004, Blair explicitly defended this view by calling for the end of the political philosophy associated with the 1648 Peace of Westphalia. So whether you choose to accept it or not, we are at war with this faction of the British establishment. They are actively moving for their genocide policies now and have taken up Obama as the fool used to implement them. And, as a fool, he has chosen to side with them. Obama's trip to the presidency was made possible by the massive financial and media support from the Murdoch apparatus and the George Soros apparatus, both creations of the British Empire. He welcomed Tony Blair with open arms. Appearing together as the keynote speakers at the National Prayer Breakfast in February, in a disgusting display, they gushed endless praise on each other. And he has shown the utmost respect to that evil, shrinking queen and her own deadly virus. But most evident of all is the president's adherence to the specific genocide policies of the British Empire. His adamant backing of the mass murderous cap-and-trade scam is, especially during a time of uncontrolled economic breakdown, a guaranteed fast track to hell, completely in line with Philip's WWF policy of green dictatorships to kill. While his proposed healthcare reform is modeled on Adolf Hitler's policy of eliminating lives unworthy of life, a reform designed to systematically eliminate entire classes of the population. And with these facts being out in the open, and having been brought directly to the awareness of the Obama administration, it is clear that Obama is not simply pushing a policy which will amount to genocide. He is trying to play the role of the next Hitler for the British Empire.